Hey everyone, I'm Mitch and I'm here with Jim, and Jim is a PDC alumni from Verge. And you've done the in-class one, and now you're working on the online, or you've done the online?
I've done the in-person one, which actually has its last weekend in September, but Rob and Michelle were gracious enough to make an offer that the current students in that program could also join the online PDC, and that wrapped up at the end of June. So I'm an alumni of the online, and I'm a current student of the in-person.
Oh, fantastic. So you're an expert.
Not yet, but
you're getting there.
yeah.
Anyway, so when was it that you first were introduced to permaculture?
So for me, my journey into permaculture actually started 7 years ago when I discovered I had this talent for drawing, and a couple years after that I took up drawing full time. That led me to finding a lot of podcasts about things in the political and psychological and cultural realm, and eventually I found a guy who was giving a talk to the UN, and he was talking about all these problems in the world. And I was finding a pattern in all these podcasts that they were bringing up problems but not solutions. And this guy mentioned this thing called permaculture. So not knowing what it was, I Googled Calgary permaculture and was lucky enough to find Verge, which is in my hometown of Calgary. And that's what led me down this path.
So that you first discovered it 7 years ago, and then...
So to answer your question, yeah, it was about a year ago, around this time of year is when I found permaculture, yeah. But the reason I found it is because I had all this time that I could multitask listening to all this content online, and that's where I found it. So,
and which podcasts and other avenues do you recommend for?
Oh, I've listened to, it kind of changes over the years. So I used to listen to a comedy one by Bill Burr, and then I used to listen to Sam Harris, which was called Waking Up. I believe he now calls it Making Sense. There's one called Very Bad Wizards. It's a philosopher and a psychologist just talking about...
Oh, I've heard about that one.
Yeah, it's really entertaining. It's a fun way to digest philosophy and psychology. So yeah, it's just kind of a varied landscape of things that I listen to.
Cool.
Yeah.
And before you were a full-time artist, what were you up to?
I was a software developer, actually.
Okay.
Working not for oil and gas companies directly, but they were the customers who bought our software. And being a visual guy, I worked on the user interface aspect of one of the applications that we developed. But the last year or so that I was there, they didn't really need me, and my job satisfaction was dropping as this drawing itch was climbing. So I sold this condo that had all these water damage problems, and I've been sort of living off that nest egg since then. And yeah, I decided to make a go of it as an artist.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And how would you say that taking the PDC and ultimately ending up here, I guess two questions. Sure. One, how's the PDC fundamentally changed how you view the world?
The biggest thing for me that PDC offered was hope, and an example of solutions that can be taken and the steps that could be taken in order to get from point A to point B. In my case, point A is a second floor apartment dwelling city slicker, to point B, which is still to be determined, but we're here on Rob and Michelle's farm, and I'm not ready for this size and scale yet, but to see how they've built their way towards this just gives me a lot of ideas and hope. And yeah, as I mentioned before, people weren't offering solutions, and the PDC itself for sure, and permaculture in general, offers a lot of solutions that can be taken by people like Rob and Michelle, who were engineers in the oil patch, and they also wanted to figure out how to make a difference, and they're examples of how it can be done. So yeah.
And we both share a geography degree, and a lot of that was just problems. It was just like, here are problems. Goodbye. Exactly.
And we were talking the other night about how geography sort of puts in things into silos, but it doesn't synthesize things again. And I found permaculture, one of the big themes is that everything is connected, and they're constantly breaking things apart into little buckets, but then reintegrating it so you can see the whole picture again, which is really important.
Cool.
Yeah.
And have you been able to apply any sort of permaculture principles into your everyday life, whether that be your daily habits or even your artwork?
Daily habits, it's a little tricky on the second floor north-facing apartment, but I do try to keep things in mind, just like water conservation being a simple one that just about everybody can do. It's hard to think of so many others. But as far as the artwork, that's also a tricky one to apply it to, but I can definitely say that I've been inspired by a lot of the themes that we found. Just recently, so most of my art up until about a few months ago has been just purely graphite pencil. But in the last few months, one of the things I did during this strange time that we're in 2020 is to learn how to draw in color. So
Yeah.
I think now I have this whole other dimension, and nature has so many rich colors, and I don't know, I'm obsessed with trees now, so I think drawing a tree is definitely in my future. So a lot of my artwork just comes from sort of these little themes that I pick up or I come across, and I get a little bug in my head that I have to do something. So a tree is definitely in my list of things to do.
Cool. And what about here? What have you been up to while you've been woofing with Rob and Michelle?
So yeah, I've been woofing here for about a week, and I have another week or 10 days or so to go. And it's been all kinds of things. So they asked me what I wanted to get into, and as I mentioned, this is all new to me, so just about anything they could throw at me is welcome. So I've been feeding the rabbits daily in the morning. Rabbits, of course, produce their nutrients that end up in either in the compost or in the garden. Yesterday I helped take apart a bridge that had washed away. I guess we've had record rain here, and for sure in Calgary. I'm assuming up here too they've had a ton of rain as well.
Can't confirm.
Yes, exactly. Today was a bit of a down day. Not down day, but down physically. I just picked a bunch of thyme and a whole bunch of other veggies from the garden. What else has there been? There was a really hot, humid day, and I realized that I am a water pump, much like the trees are. I sweat probably 4 liters, but I made sure I drank 5. And that was just, mulching the garden, walking the dogs. Some cattle showed up on Rob and Michelle's land, and so we've been doing a lot of trips down there. We connected a pump to set it up so that the cattle can have some water several times a day. That actually brings me to this interesting point that I've noticed with Rob and Michelle is how quickly they adapt to things. So in the PDC and in permaculture, you talk about time as a scale, and so they do have long-term plans for this property, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, etc. But as things come up, like cattle showing up on the land, they're able to quickly adapt and integrate it and actually see it as an opportunity and leverage it, as opposed to panicking and seeing it as a problem. I'm trying to think of another example of things that have come up quick like that. But that's just been one of the big valuable things. Woofing with Rob and Michelle is seeing how permaculturists think. So. One example was the compost toilet. They were having just a discussion in the kitchen thinking, okay, so where should we move this thing? And Michelle immediately went into design mode. She even verbally said that. She's like, okay, let's start to design. And she's thinking about zones and sectors and things that we learn about in the permaculture course. So from that quick discussion, they sort of settled on where it should go pretty quickly. So it's cool to see how versatile they are, just not only in space but time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And you've only been here for a little bit. What are the things that you think are going to last the longest in your head?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Just seeing, like I said, the way they adapt and the way they think. I want it to be around smart people who talk about these things all the time.
It's overwhelming, eh?
Yeah, just about, yeah. I mean, and they're always learning too, so that was actually a big key. Michelle was just flipping through a book yesterday about plants and gardening and greenhouses, and she was saying aha or over and over because she's always learning, and they've been at it for 10 years. So I guess one of the big insights is learning. The more you learn, the more you know, you find out that what you don't know.
Yep.
So it's going to be a constant learning curve, and it's just been awesome to have people around who have been through a lot of these hoops, and you can learn from their mistakes and get their advice. So I forget what your question exactly was, but
what are the takeaway homes? That's definitely one of them.
Right, yeah, for sure.
And I guess if you could, I'd like unlimited budget, doing anything, what do you reckon you'd do?
Oh man, I'm a pretty modest guy, so I don't need much. In my head, my sort of dream is to, I got into this because I wanted to have a little bit more control over the supply chain that I make use of, and just a little more autonomy and, you know, food and water security. So I'm just one fella right now, but I'm thinking if I could probably, and I'm thinking of the size that I could manage. So like I said, we're on a quarter section here, which is, that would be a bit overwhelming for one guy, but if I could find an acre or two, get a garden going, get a greenhouse going, get a food forest going, you know, the permaculture staples.
Yeah, the dream.
Yeah, all those staples, and get it to the point where it's self-managing, because that's kind of one of the goals of permaculture, is to design things properly so that you don't have to put in all this backbreaking, repetitive work due to poor design. So, and that would, and you know, the dream would be able to get up, do a little managing and tweaking and looking after things, and then have all day to draw in maybe a tiny home or something like that. Although I do want to integrate some rainwater capture, so keeping the roof catchment size in mind is something that I've been thinking about too. So just last night I was watching the lightning out the window and and I was just doing some thinking. So that's another thing you learn in permaculture, is 100 hours of thinking for 1 hour of work. So my work is cut out for me, and the big thing I need to do now is just think about where in the world I want to be, who I want to be around. That's been another insight with Rob and Michelle, is they kept in mind they always keep in mind community. So they've got family and friends close by, and a lot of all the connections and networking they've done over the years I believe that's a big factor in why they picked where on earth they ended up here. And my first night here, I called this paradise, so it'd be amazing to be in this area if I could. Or I might think about being closer to family, so I have a lot to think about. Definitely 100 hours for sure.
Yeah, this would be a fantastic place to call home.
Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Any insights, tips, tricks you'd pass on to just the average folk?
I highly recommend the PDC. If it doesn't change your life, it'll at least open your eyes to things that are possible, and just the fact that, for me, part of the frustration that led me here was, again, like I said, not a lot of solutions were being offered. And I always made the assumption that these answers and solutions will come from on high, from the people in charge making decisions. And I've recently realized that that's not the case. It's going to have to come from the ground up.
Oh, that's such a good takeaway.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed, or a little phrase I've come up with, I don't know, maybe I didn't coin it, but permaculture is a grassroots movement, just with fewer lawns.
Yeah.
And the other insight I had the other day was nature always wins. So we might give her a beating, but in the end, she's going to win. So you can either beat her or join her, and permaculture and the PDC will help you join her. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of places that people can check out your art?
Absolutely, yeah. So when I started this, I started drawing 7 years ago, and about 6 months into it, my teacher noticed that I had this natural, I don't know what like a talent for it or something. And she said I could be selling prints of my work. So I got permission from the photographer on this one drawing that I did to sell prints, but not to personally profit. So I decided I would donate the print proceeds from the sales to a charity, and I came up with Doctors Without Borders. It seemed like a pretty respectable charity, and I came up with the name Drawings Without Borders. Cool. As kind of a double entendre, or maybe a triple entendre. Some of the drawings I've done have things coming out of a faux mat that I've drawn. So the website is drawborderless.com. And that's my Instagram handle as well, just drawborderless, BORDERLESS. I think I got that right.
Hope so.
Yeah.
If not, we'll add it to the show notes.
Right. So yeah, those are kind of the three main. Oh, and I think I have a Facebook page too, so that's also facebook.com/drawborderless, or however those handles are set up. And yeah, I do originals that come from my own head. I do print sales, like I mentioned. Lately I've got into doing cards, so you can find me at some pop-up markets in Calgary when we're allowed to do those again. And I also started taking commissions about 2.5 years ago. So
cool.
Yeah, lots of ways of getting this creative whatever this is out of me. So
Cool.
yeah.
Fantastic.
All right.
Well, awesome.
Cheers. Thanks, Mitch.
No worries.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Have fun. Stay safe. We'll
Good
see you
luck.
in the future.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.